decided to walk out in the front yard with her for a while, try to keep her quiet and, you know, stuff. And as we were standing out in the front yard, my sister-in-law was the first one that noticed the light, and she said, look, now, where this was is in North Omaha, and the way airplanes come into North Omaha, they come in from the north and around to what's called Epley Airfield. And she says, look at that airplane, Linda. She says, doesn't that have odd-colored landing lights? And I looked at it, and it was an orange. They weren't white, they were orange. And I said, well, I don't think planes have orange landing lights. Mm-hmm. And it got over an area of a cemetery that was about a half a mile to a mile from my parents' house. And we stood there, and it stopped dead. It was round, it was circular. It stopped dead over the cemetery. I mean, straight over the cemetery, where the cemetery was. Mm. It turned several different colors. It turned from the orange to the blue, green, yes, and then it turned an absolute blood red, and it looked like it settled into the cemetery.
Oh, man.
Judy and I stood there and watched this,
yes,
horrified, and we run back into the house and told everybody what we had seen. And my dad said, well, he said, let's go up and drive along the back side of the cemetery. The name of the street is State Street. Yeah. And he said, see if we can see anything up there. We drove up there, drove up and down, couldn't see anything. Went home. The next morning was like a Saturday morning. And my husband and I used to go over and have coffee and rolls with my parents on Saturday morning. We were over there. And my dad said, where does it look? Thing came down now, did you say? And I said, it looked like it was the highest point in the cemetery. And he says, well, why don't we just drive up there and look around? So my mother, my dad, I, my 21-year-old brother, and my husband, and my baby and I went up there.
Careful.
And we got up to where we thought was the highest point in the, what was the highest point in the cemetery. And for where we were, the place we were, we could see a straight shot to my parents' house.
Yes.
Okay?
Yes.
Everything was flat up there. It was like there was an intersection, like a crossroads-like place there.
Okay, we're running short on time.
Okay, anyway, we all got out of my father's car, and we had been there for maybe 30 seconds looking around. There was a fresh grave over to the side, and you know how they lay the flowers down on a grave when okay. All these flowers were blown all over the place. All of a sudden, from nowhere, we had no idea from where, appears this car. And it's an old black car. My dad's dead now, but he said it was like maybe an old Packard or something like that, or Dodge or something.
Yes.
But it looked like it was absolutely brand new. This one guy, the guy that was the driver, just got out and stood by the car, and the other guy started coming around and came over and said, and I was trying, it seemed so surreal because I was trying to figure out where...
Hey, you gotta get it out, man. We've only got about 30 seconds.
Anyway, the guy asked us he said, what business do you have here? And my dad said, well, we were just looking around. And he said, if you have no further business here, leave immediately.
Were these men in black?
Well, I'll tell you how they were dressed.
Were they in black?
No, they were not in black. They had World War II clothes on, is what my dad was.
All right, well, then what you saw was probably a ghost.
A ghost?
Yep.
2 of them?
Great.
With sunglasses?
Well, okay, it sounds like men in black, but you say they weren't dressed in black, right?
No, they were not dressed in black, but their air of authority to leave that area immediately. And since then, we've gone up there, and that area did not look like it did then.
All right. Well, I appreciate the story. I'm not sure that's exactly a Men in Black story.
Well, actually, among researchers, these days, these guys don't really have to have Gothic taste in clothing and to always wear black, because oftentimes the details vary, but in all of the trappings, it sounds like a Men in Black story, except that they had on gray clothing.
Exactly right. As I listened, I mean, graveyard, blood red object, strange guys dressed in World War II type clothing. That sounds like a ghost story to me.
Did you hear the reference to the crossroads?
I did, yes.
Yeah. A lot of manifestations take place at crossroads.
Wildcard line, you're on the air with Jim Keith. Hi.
Yes, sir. I'd like to ask your guest a question about the Mothman.
Yes.
That appeared, that was seen in southern Ohio along the Ohio River.
Yes.
This was back about 63, 64. I was living there at the time. I grew up there. And I'd like to ask him if there is any connection between the bridge that collapsed across the Ohio River at the time. There's a lot of people that lived back there when I was there who think that it had something to do with the UFOs and the Mothman they were seeing at the time. And also I understand that there were some prophecies about that bridge collapsing.
Mothman prophecies.
Right.
Jim?
Yeah, in fact, John Keel, the main researcher who worked on the Mothman case, was in touch with a channeled entity named Apal, who predicted that there was going to be a catastrophe in that area. He said something about a water processing plant blowing up or something. I don't remember the exact details. That was going to take place on a certain date. In fact, on that date, the Silver Bridge collapsed. I believe 68 people were killed. The interesting thing that I find about that, aside from this prescience, this knowing that it was going to happen, is that just before the Silver Bridge collapsed, Men in Black showed up in the town of Point Pleasant, a large number of them, and people were seen crawling around on the bridge in the days prior to the collapse. I don't necessarily see that as a paranormal occurrence. The Mothman flap is truly an interesting case.
All right. East of the Rockies, you're on the air with Jim Keith and Art Bell. Hi.
Yes, I had a strange situation happen back in 1985.
Where are you, sir?
I'm in Upper New York right now. My name's Dave.
Okay, Dave.
Back then I used to live in Pennsylvania, Latrobe, Pennsylvania. And I went to a gathering. Friends of mine had a little party, and we hit it up pretty good. And came time to go to bed, and I went to bed about, I don't know, it was probably 8 o'clock at night. And something woke me up out of my sleep around midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And when I opened my eyes, there was, at the time it was kind of scary, because I was only 18 years old then. There was somebody standing over top of me, what I thought was somebody. And it was like a split-second thing. He was there and then he was gone. And what I saw was, he reached out to me. And when I realized what was going on, like a split second, I realized what was going on, he was gone. And the next morning, I explained to everybody what happened, and they all were like, yeah, whatever. They didn't believe me.
Right.
Well, when I ended up going home to my parents' house, I was into weightlifting and wrestling and all that, and I weighed myself, and I was 20 pounds less than what I was the night before. I weighed 20 pounds less.
My.
And I'd explained this to doctors, and I'd explained this to different people, trying to explain how that happened. And everybody, like, yeah, we don't believe you. And the doctors couldn't explain it.
Anything resembling a Men in Black?
Yeah. The person had like a black tuxedo top on, like an overcoat with long sleeves and a long tail.
Here we go.
Yeah. And when he reached out to me, I was so startled that, I sort of like jumped up, and when I looked around again, he was gone.
Well, it's a good thing there's not a lot of those guys around, or Kaito Slim would be out of business.
I couldn't explain it. I had another thing happen to me. I was just wondering, I heard the other guy talking about the flatbed.
Yeah.
And he saw something on a flatbed.
Oh, I've seen plenty of those, too.
Yeah, I drive tractor trailer now, and I was down in Georgia on a backcountry road. I decided not to take the interstate, and I passed a flatbed who had something on the bed that was marked with placards that said U.S. government property.
Yep.
And I was in the Air Force for 6 years. and I know what planes look like. I've seen some of the secret planes. And this thing had no cockpit, no jet propulsion on the back of it, and they had like a cable all the way around it saying U.S. government property.
Yep. Well, I appreciate the story. I've seen a lot like that. And the characters that you see driving, accompanying these vehicles many times, are what you might describe as men in black.